Enjoy it while it lasts because it's how you know I'm extremely bored. I'm about to do my own audiobook. I've been doing my own audiobook for quite some time, but yeah, I'm gonna do my own audiobook. It's of The Mortal Instruments, Book One, City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. Could have sworn her name was Clarissa, but I'm gonna start from page one. I'm only like 2 or 3 chapters into the book anyway, because I watched the TV show and I seen the movie. But I'm gonna start from here, I guess. I have not slept between the acting of a dreadful thing and the first motion. All the internum is like a what phantasma or a hideous dream. I skip over the real big words that I'm like can't understand. Or a hideous dream. The genius and the mortal instruments are then in council, and the state of man, like to a kingdom, suffers then the nature of an insurrection. Insurrection, I guess. William Shakespeare. Oh, that's probably why I don't understand it. Okay, chapter 1. Pandemonium. First off, I'm gonna set a timer for 30 minutes because after 30 minutes, I'm gonna start another video. Set a timer for 30 minutes, Siri.
Okay, 30 minutes in.
Yeah, shut up. Anyway, it says chapter 1, Pandemonium. I think that's how you say it. You gotta be kidding me, the bouncer said, folding his arms across his massive chest. He stared out at the boy in the red zip-up jacket and shook his shaved head. You can't bring that thing in here. The 50, 60 teenagers in line outside the Pandemonium Club leaned toward to eavesdrop. It was a long wait to get into the all-age club, especially on a Sunday, and not much generally happened in line. The bouncer was fierce, was fierce, and would come down instantly on anyone who looked like they were going to start trouble. 15-year-old Clary Frey, Fairchild. 15-year-old Clary Frey, standing in line with her best friend Simon, leaned forward along with everyone else, hoping for some excitement. Oh, come on, the kid hoisted the thing over his head. It looked like a wooden beam, pointed at one end. It's part of my costume. The bouncer raised an eyebrow. Which is what? The boy grinned. He was normal enough looking, Clary thought, from Pandemonium. He had electric blue dyed hair that stuck up around his head like the tendril, but no elaborate facial tattoos or big metal bars through his ears or lips. I'm a vampire hunter. He pushed down on a wooden thing. It bent as easily as a blade of grass bending sideways. It's fake, foam rubber. See, the boys. Man, I can't be this bored to read a freaking book. Well, I mean, I read books all the time, but the YouTube Live, I really don't. I was trying to do audiobooks last time. It's so freaking hard. But back to the book. The boy's wide eyes were way too bright a green, Clary noticed. The color of antifreeze spring grass. Color contact lenses, probably. The bouncer shrugged, abruptly bored. Whatever, go on in. The boy slid past him, quick as an eel. Clary liked Lilith. Clary liked the lillet to his shoulders. The way he tossed his hair as he went. There was a word for him that her mother would have used. Associate? I think that's how you say it. You thought he was cute, said Simon, sounding resigned, didn't you? Clary dug her elbow into his ribs, but didn't answer. Inside the club was full of dry ice smoke. Colored lights, colored lights played over the floor of the. I don't know what's going on with me. Inside the club was full of dry ice smoke. Colored lights played over the dance floor, turning it into a multicolored fairyland of blue and acid green, hot pink and gold. The boy in the red jacket stroked the long razor sharp blade in his hand as ideal smile laying over his lips. As okay, an ideal smile played over his lips. It had been so easy. A little bit of a glamour on the blade to make it look harmless. Another glamour on his eyes. And the moment the bouncer had looked straight at them, he was in. Of course, he could probably have gotten by without all that trouble, but it was part of the fun. Fooling the Mundies, doing it, doing it all out in the open in front of them, getting off on the blank looks on their sheep-like faces. Not that the humans didn't have their uses. The boy's green eyes scanned the dance floor, where slender limbs clad in scraps of silk and black leather appeared and disappeared inside the revolving columns of smoke as the Mondays danced. Girls tossed their long hair, boys swung their leather-clad hips, and bare skin glittered with sweat. Uh, visuality. I thought it was visual, but there's no S. Visuality just poured off them. I don't know. Waves of energy that filled him with a drunken dizziness. His lips curled. They didn't know how lucky they were. They didn't know what it was like to eke out life in a dead world, where the sun hung limp in the sky like a burned cinder. Their lives burned as brightly as candle flames and were as easy to snuff out. This is why I prefer the movies over the doggone book. His hand tightened on the blade he carried, and he began to step out onto the dance floor when a girl broke away from the mass of dancers and began walking toward him. He stared at her. She was beautiful for a human. Long hair, nearly the precise color of black ink, charcoal, charcoal eyes, floor-length white gown, the kind the kind woman used to wear when the kind women used to wear when this world was younger. Lace sleeves bailed out around her slim arms. Around her neck was a thick silver chain, on which hung a dark red pendant the size of a baby's fist. He only had to narrow his eyes to know that it was real and precious. His mouth started to water as she neared him. Vital energy pulsed from her like blood from an open wound. She smiled, passing him, beckoning with her eyes. He turned to follow her, tasting the phantom sizzling of her death on his lips. It was almost easy. It was always easy. He could already feel the power of her evaporating life coursing through his veins like fire. Humans were so stupid. They had something so precious, and they barely safeguarded it at all. They threw away their lives for money, for packets of powder, for a stranger's charming smile. The girl was a pale ghost retreating through a colored smoke. She reached the wall and turned, bunching her skirt up in her hands, lifting it as she grinned at him. Under the skirt, she was wearing thigh-high boots. He sauntered up to her, his skin prickling with her nearness. Up close she wasn't so perfect. He could see the mascara smudged under her eyes, the sweat sticking her hair to her neck. He could smell her mortality, the sweet rot of corruption. Got you, he thought. A cool smile curled his lips. She moved to the side, and he could see that she was leaning against a closed door. No admittance storage was scrawled across it in red paint. She reached behind her for the knob, turned it, slid inside. He caught a glimpse of stacking boxes, tangling wires, a storage room. He glanced behind him. No one was looking so much the better, so much the better, so much the better if she wanted privacy. He slipped into the room after her, unaware that he was being followed. So, Simon said, pretty good music, eh? Clary didn't reply. They were dancing, or what passed for it. A lot of swinging back and forth with cautious lunges toward the floor, as if one of them had dropped a contact lens. In a space between a group of teen boys in metallic corsets and a young Asian couple who were making out passionately, their colored hair extensions tangled together like vines. A a boy with a lip piercing and a teddy bear backpack was handing out free tablets of herbal es- ecstasy. I think that's ecstasy or ecstasy. I don't know. His parachute pants flapping in the breeze from the wind machine. Clary wasn't paying much attention to their immediate surroundings. Her eyes were on the blue-haired boy who talked his way into the club. He was prowling through the crowd as if he were looking for something. There was something about the way he moved that reminded her of something. I, for one, Simon went on, am enjoying myself immensely. This seemed, I think that's immensely. This seemed unlikely. Simon, as always, stuck out at the club like a sore thumb in jeans and an old T-shirt that said "Made in Brooklyn" across the front. His his freshly scrubbed hair was dark brown instead of green or pink, and his glasses perched crookedly on the end of his nose. He looked less as if he were contemplating the powders of darkness, and more as if he were on his way to the chess club. I'm still getting bored. Mm-hmm. Clary knew perfectly well that he came to Pandemonium with her only because she liked it. That he thought it was boring. She wasn't even sure why it was that she liked it. The clothes, the music made it like a dream, someone else's life, not her boring real life at all. But she was always too shy to talk to anyone but Simon. The blue hair boy was making his way off the dance floor. He looked a little lost, as if he had found whom he was looking for, as if he as if he hadn't found who he was looking for. Clary wondered what happened. What would happen if she went up and introduced herself, offered to show him around? Maybe he'd just stare at her, or maybe he was shy too. Maybe he'd be grateful and pleased and try not to show it the way boys did. But she know, maybe. The blue haired boy straightened up suddenly, snapping to attention like a hunting dog on point. Clary followed the line of his gaze and saw the girl in the white dress. I'm sorry, my candy got stuck to my teeth. Maybe that's what I get for trying to eat it piece by piece. Oh well, Clary thought, trying not to feel like a deflating party balloon. After assessed that, the girl was gorgeous. The kind of girl Clary would have liked to draw. Tall and ribbon slim, with a long spill of black hair. Even at this distance, Clary could see the red pendant across her throat. It pulsed under the lights of the dance floor, like a separation, disembodied heart. I feel, Simon went on, that this evening DJ Bat is doing a singularly Exceptional job. Don't you agree? Clary rolled her eyes and didn't answer. Simon hated trance music. Her attention was on the girl in the white dress. Though the darkness smoked an artificial fog. Her pale dress shone out like a beacon. No wonder the blue-haired boy was following her as if he were under a spell, too distracted too distracted to notice anything else around him. Even the two dark shapes hard on his heels, weaving after him through the crowd. Clary slowed her dancing and stared. She could just make out that the shapes were boys, tall and wearing black clothes. She couldn't have said how she knew that they were following the other boy, but she did. She could see it in the way they paced him. Their careful watchfulness, the slinking grace of their movement. A small flower of appreciation began to open inside her chest. Meanwhile, Simon added, I wanted to tell you that lately I've been cross dressing. Also, I'm sleeping with your mom. I thought you should know. The girl had reached the wall and was opening a door marked no admittance. She beckoned the blue-haired boy after him, and they slid through the door. It wasn't anything Clary hadn't seen before. A couple sneaking off to the dark corner of the club to make out. But that made it even weirder that they were being followed. She raised herself up on tippy toes, trying to see over the crowd. The two boys had stopped at the door and seemed to be conferring with each other. One of them was blonde, the other dark haired. Okay, so the long haired girl, I think that's Isabel. The blonde, of course, is Jace, and the dark haired boy is Alex, I believe. I think so. But I'm not sure who the blue haired boy is. I think that's probably like a demon or something. Um, but Simon could see him, so it can't be a demon. But it can be a shapeshifter. Okay, the blonde one reached into his jacket and drew out something long, sharp that flashed under the strobing lights. A knife. Simon! Clary shouted and seized his arm. What? Simon looked alarmed. Not really sleeping with your mom, you know. I was just trying to get your attention. Not that your mom isn't a very attractive woman for her age. Do you see those guys? She pointed wildly, almost hitting a curvy black girl who was dancing nearby. The girl shot her an evil look. Sorry. Claire turned back to Simon. Do you see those two guys over there by that door? Simon squinted, then shrugged. I don't see anything. There are two of them. They were following the guy with the blue hair, the one you thought was cute. Yes, but that's not the point. The blonde one pulled a knife. Are you sure? Simon stared harder, shaking his head. I still don't see anyone. I'm sure. Suddenly, all business. Simon squared his shoulders. I'll get one of the security guards. You stay here. He strode away, pushing through the crowd. Clary turned just in time to see the blonde boy slip through the no admittance door. His friend right on his heels. She looked around. Simon was still trying to shove his way across the dance floor, but he wasn't making much progress. Even if she yelled, no one would hear her. And by the time Simon got back, something terrible might already have happened. Biting hard on her lower lip, Clary started to wiggle through the crowd. What's your name? She turned and smiled. What faint light there was in the storage room, spilling down through high barred windows smeared with dirt, piles of electrical cords, piles of electrical cables, along with broken bits of mirrored disco balls and discarded paint cans littered the floor. Isabel, I knew it. Mhm. That's a nice name. That's a nice name. He walked toward her, stepping carefully among the wires in case any of them were live. In the faint light, she looked half transparent, bleached of color, wrapped in white like an angel. It would be a pleasure to make her fall. I had, I hadn't seen you here before. You're asking me if I come here often? She giggled. Um, she giggled, covering her mouth with her hand. There was some sort of bracelet around her wrist, just under the cuff of her dress. Then, as he neared her, he saw that it wasn't a bracelet at all, but a pattern inked into her skin, a matrix of swirled lines. He froze. You, he didn't finish. She moved with lightning swiftness, striking out at him with her one hand, a blow to his chest that would have sent him down gasping if he'd been human. He staggered back, and now there was something in his hand, a coil whip that glinted gold as she brought it down, curling around his ankles, jerking him off his feet. He hit the ground, writhing, the hated, the hated metal biting deep into his skin. She laughed, standing over him, and dizzily, he thought that she should have known. No human girl would wear a dress like the one Isabel wore. She'd wore it to cover her skin, all of her skin. Isabel yanked hard on the whip, securing it. Her smile glittered like poisonous water. He's all yours, boys. A low laugh sounded behind him, and now there were hands on him, hauling him upright, throwing him against one of the concrete pillars. Uh, he could feel the damp stone under his back. His hands were pulled behind him, his wrists bound with wire. As he struggled, someone walked around the side of the pillar into his view. A boy, as young as Isabel and just as pretty. His tawny eyes glitter like chips of amber. So, the boy said, are there any more of you? The blue-haired boy could feel blood wheeling up under the too tight metal, making his wrist slippery. Any other what? Come on now, the tawny-eyed boy held up his hands, and his dark sleeves slipped down, showing the runes inked all over his wrist, the backs of his hands, his palms. You know what I am. Far back inside his skull, the shackled boy's second set of teeth began to grin. Shadowhunter, he hissed. The other boy grinned all over his face. Got you, he said. Clary pushed the door to the storage room open and stepped inside. For a moment, she thought it. Did the screen just freaking brighten up? I think so. Clary pushed the door to the storage room open and slipped inside. For a moment, she thought it was deserted. The only windows was high up and barred. Faint street noise came through them. The sound of honking cars and squealing brakes. The room smelled like old paint, and a heavy layer of dust covered the floor, marked by smeared shoe prints. There's no one in here, she realized, looking around in bewilderment. It was cold in the room, despite the August heat outside. Her back was icy with sweat. She took a step forward, tangling her feet in electrical wires. She bent down to free her sneakers from the cables, and heard voices. A girl's laugh, a boy answering sharply when she straightened up and she saw them. It was as if they had sprung into existence between one blink of her eyes and the next. There was a girl in her long white dress, her black hair hanging down her back like damp seaweed. The two boys were with her, the tall one with black hair like hers, and the smaller fair one whose hair gleamed like brass in the dim light coming through the windows high above. The fair boy was standing with his hands in his pocket, facing the punk kid, who was tied to the pillar with what looked like piano wires. His hands stretched behind him, his legs bound at the ankles. His face was pulled tight with pain and fear. Heart hammering in her chest. Heart hammering in her chest, Clary ducked behind the nearest concrete pillar and peered around it. She watched as a fair-haired boy uh, paced back and forth. His arms now crossed over his chest. So he said, you still haven't told me if there are any more of your kind with you. Your kind? Clary wondered what he was talking about. Maybe she stumbled into some kind of gang war. I don't know what you're talking about. The blue-haired boy's tone was pained. Surely, he mean other demons," said the dark-haired boy, speaking for the first time. "You do know what demons are, don't you?" The boy tied to the pillar turned his face away, his mouth working. "Demons," drawled the blond boy, tracing the word on the air with his fingers. "Religiously defined as hell, denizen, 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 the servant of Satan, but understood here for the purpose of the clave to be any malevolent, mal- malevolent, malevolent. I don't know. I think it's malevolent. I don't know. Spirit whose origin in outside our home, our own home, uh, dimension. That's enough, Chase," said the girl. "I knew it." "Isabel's right," agreed the taller boy. "Nobody here needs a lesson in semantics. I think that's how you say it, semantics or demonology. I'm pretty sure I got that word right. Demonology. They're crazy," Clary thought. "Actually crazy." Jace raised his hand and smiled. There was something fierce about the gesture, something that reminded Clary of documentaries she'd watched about lions on the Discovery Channel. The way the big cat will raise their head and sniff the air for prey. "Isabel and Alec think I talk too much," he said confidently. "Do you think I talk too much?" The blue-haired boy didn't reply. His mouth was still working. "I could give you information," he said. "I know where Valentine is." Jace glanced back at Alec, who shrugged. "Valentine's in the ground," Jace said. The thing's just toying with us." Isabel tossed her hair. "Kill it, Jace," she said. "It's not going to tell us anything." Jace raised his hand, and Clary saw dim light sparking over the knife he was holding. It was oddly translucent, the blade clear as crystal. Sharp as a shard of glass. The hilts set with red stones. The bound boy gasped. "Valentine is back," he protested, dragging at the bonds that held his hands behind his back. All the inferior all the inferior worlds know it. I know it. I could tell you where he is." Rage flared suddenly in Jason's icy eyes. "By the angel, every time we capture one of you bastards, you claim you know where Valentine is. Well, we know where he is too. He's in hell. And you," Jace turned the knife in his gas, the edge sparkling like a line of fire. "You can join him there." Clary could take no more. She stepped out from behind the pillar. "Stop," she cried. "You can't do this." Jace whirled, so startled that the knife flew from his hand and clattered against the concrete floor. Isabel and Alec turned along with him, wearing identical expressions of astonishment. The blue-haired boy hung in his bounce, stunned and gaping. It was Alec who spoke first. "What's this?" he demanded, looking from Clary to the companions, as if they might know what she was doing there. "It's a girl," Chase said, recovering his composure. "Surely you've seen girls before, Alec. Your sister Isabel is one." He took a step closer to Clary, squinting as if he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. "A Mundy girl," he said, half to himself, "and she can see us." "Of course I can see you," Clary said. "I'm not blind, you know." Oh, but you are, said Jace, bending to pick up his knife. You just don't know it. You just don't know it. He straightened up. You'd better get out of here if you know what's good for you. I'm not going anywhere, Clary said. If I do, you'll kill him. She pointed at the boy with the blue hair. That's true, admitted Jace, twirling the knife between his fingers. What do you care if I kill him or not? But because, Clary spluttered. You can't just go around killing people. You're right, said Jace. You can't go around killing people. He pointed at the boy with blue hair, whose eyes were slitted. Clary wondered if he'd fainted. That's not a person, little girl. It might look like a person and talk like a person and maybe even bleed like a person, but it's a monster. Jace, said Isabel warningly, that's enough. You're crazy, Clary said, backing away from him. I've called the police, you know. They'll be here any second. She's lying, said Alec, but there was no doubt on his face. But there was doubt on his face. Jace, do you? He never got to finish his sentence. At the moment, the blue-haired boy, with a high, yowling cry, tore free of his restraints, binding him to the pillar, and flung himself on Jace. They fell to the ground and rolled together. The blue-haired boy tearing at Jace with his hands that glittered as if tipped with metal. Clary backed up, wanting to run, but her feet caught on a loop of wiring, and she went down, knocking the breath out of her chest. She could hear Isabel shrieking, and that's my timer. Uh, I'll do another live later, probably, or I might just start a new one because I'm still bored, and this book is actually getting pretty good.